Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next hour. Trump gives Iran deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by Tuesday 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Tehran condemns Trump's remarks as incitement to war crimes. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar discusses West Asia situation with Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi, also speaks with Qatari and UAE leadership. Amid conflict, India's 9th tanker Green Asha crosses the Strait of Hormuz. 8th tanker Green Sanvi carrying for 6,000 metric tons of LPG to arrive in India today. Oil prices open higher after Easter holiday as West Asia conflict continues to disrupt global oil supply. OPEC Plus nations agree to increase oil production quotas for second month in a row. NASA's Artemis 2 mission prepares to enter the moon's sphere of influence, where moon's gravity will have stronger pull on the spacecraft than Earth. Crew shares pictures of Oriental Basin never before seen by human eyes. US President Donald Trump issued an expletive-laden threat to Iran, announcing a final deadline for Tehran to reopen the crucial Strait of Hormuz. Trump threatened to attack civilian infrastructure inside Iran, including bridges and power plants, if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened by his stated deadline of Tuesday. Later on Sunday, the president, in a follow-up post, gave a more precise deadline, Tuesday 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The president also posted online that he will hold a Monday news conference with the US military from the Oval Office. Trump's fresh threat to Iran on Sunday came after the US president's repeated threats to target Iran's critical and energy infrastructure if Tehran did not accept a truce deal or reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran, however, responded with threats of its own and accused Trump of pushing the US towards a living hell and warning that the region could burn. Iran's foreign ministry said on Sunday that Iran will retaliate in kind against any attacks on its national infrastructure, warning that the Iranian armed forces were prepared to target US-linked assets in response to any act of aggression. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai stated that Tehran's reaction would be a reciprocating measure following recent threats against the country's bridges, power plants and other infrastructure. Baghai also addressed the American public, asserting that the current conflict is a war of choice by the US administration that does not reflect the will of its people.
Reaction would be one of reciprocating any such attack. Our armed forces have made it clear that in case Iran's infrastructure is attacked, we would react in kind. Our armed forces would target any similar infrastructure that is owned or in any way or manner related to the United States, or contributes to their act of aggression against Iran. This is not something that we will do it voluntarily or by willful decision. This is something that is as part of our defense measures against their illegal act.
Meanwhile, Iran's Revolutionary Guards warned that attacks against US economic interests in the region would be intensified if attacks on civilian targets in Iran are repeated. Iran's Revolutionary Guards said in a post on social media platform X on Sunday that the Strait of Hormuz would never return to its former state, warning the United States and Israel. Vessels trafficked around Hormuz as Trump warned Iran until Tuesday night to open strait a day after Iran said Iraq was exempt from any restrictions to transit the vital sea route. 3 Omani-operated tankers, a French-owned container ship and a Japanese-owned gas carrier have crossed the Strait of Hormuz since April 2nd, reflecting Iran's policy to allow passage for vessels it deems friendly. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on Sunday. Jaishankar received the phone call from Araghchi, during which the two leaders discussed the West Asia conflict amid Trump's fresh ultimatum to Iran demanding the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian embassy in New Delhi said the two foreign ministers discussed bilateral relations as well as regional and international developments. The External Affairs Minister also held a phone conversation with Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan and Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman. It is understood that the conflict's impact on global energy supplies figured prominently in the talks. In the last couple of weeks, India has made diplomatic efforts focusing on ending the conflict in West Asia as soon as possible and ensuring the unimpeded flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, U.S. forces have successfully rescued the seriously wounded F-15 crew member from deep inside the mountains of Iran, calling it one of the most daring operations in U.S. history. U.S. President Trump announced the dramatic rescue of the weapons system operator sitting behind the pilot aboard the advanced F-15E fighter jet that was shot down last Friday. He was rescued by special forces in a daylight mission shortly after the crash in the rugged Kogilwe and Boyer Ahmed province of southwest Iran. The airman was wounded after his ejection but could still walk, reportedly scaling a 2,100-meter ridgeline in the mountains before hiding in a crevasse. The extraction operation, launched overnight on Sunday, involved dozens of aircraft and hundreds of special operations troops, including Navy SEAL Team 6 commandos. Although Iran's military claims the U.S. operation was completely foiled, it has not given a full account of events. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu congratulated U.S. President on the successful retrieval of an American airman from Iran and emphasized Israel's history with rescue missions.
Congratulations, President Trump. All Israelis rejoice in the incredible rescue of a brave American pilot by America's dauntless warriors. This rescue operation reinforces a sacred principle. No one is left behind. This is a shared value demonstrated time and time again in the history of both our countries.
And the conflict between Israel and Iran entered its 6th week, with tensions threatening to cause regional escalation. One of Israel's strikes in Beirut Sunday killed at least 5 people and wounded 52 in the Tehran neighborhood, while a strike targeting an apartment building in Ain Sadeh down east of Beirut killed 3 people and injured 3 others. A strike in the southern town of Khwar Hatta, far from the border with Israel, killed 7 people, including a 4-year-old girl, the ministry said. Search and rescue teams combed through the rubble of a residential building in Haifa on Sunday after an Iranian missile struck the northern Israeli city. Israeli paramedics said they were treating 9 patients, including an elderly man in a serious condition who was injured by a heavy object, and other casualties in mild condition with shrapnel and blast injuries. The U.S. Central Command shared images on Platform X that showed U.S. forces taking out attack drones by Iran. The post reads, and I quote, U.S. forces are taking out attack drones used by the Iranian regime to threaten Americans and indiscriminately target civilians in neighboring countries. Now, Kuwaiti authorities said early Sunday that drone strikes have damaged 2 power and water desalination plants, forcing the shutdown of 2 electricity generating units. Kuwait Petroleum Corporation also said its oil complex in the Shuvakh district in Kuwait City was targeted by Iranian drones early Sunday, sparking a fire, causing damage and prompting the evacuation of the building. All right, let's go across to DD India's Akshay Dongre now. He's joining us live from New Delhi. Akshay, US President Trump has issued one of his starkest warnings yet to Iran. Explicit language and warned of consequences if Tehran failed to comply. Are we looking at a deliberate hardening of the US stance here?
Well, Abhishek, it seems that it has become a habit of Donald Trump to use ever increasingly more language that is directly attacking in nature, using words that are not quite diplomatic in nature, that is what we can interpret as a street language many times in his speeches, and obviously not befitting the statements of the president of one of the oldest democracy in the world. What we are seeing is obviously a threat, but the language obviously seems to be something unprecedented in nature, because no US president, no leaders of any other country have, in my memory at least, have used this kind of a language as far as dealing with the crisis of this sort is concerned. So that takes away the seriousness of the issue, instead of the intended increasing it. The intentions behind it, obviously, by Donald Trump is to give a stark warning, threaten in a sense, and also get his things done in a broad manner when it comes to either opening up of Strait of Hormuz or the entire conflict is concerned. But what it does is it more take away the seriousness from the issue, because once it's fine, second time people start to take you less seriously, and if it becomes a habit, people start to think that this is just another tantrum that is being thrown by the US president, because these kind of warnings have been given consistently for the past 1 month, especially of this conflict. It started with stating that the conflict will be touch and go, and there will be a regime change, tall claims being made as and being interpreted and rather being shown as facts, then again changing of stance, changing of the objectives of the conflict, and ever increasingly threatening and more offensive language being used by the US president has now made Iran obviously not respond to even these statements and do as they are doing as far as the conflict is concerned. So it remains to be seen that what exactly happens on the ground, but as long as as far as the statements are concerned, they really lack any kind of serious threat, especially given the fact that this kind of language is repeatedly being used.
Actually, also the global oil crisis is worsening. Tell us, what could this mean for global energy security and supply chains if the Strait of Hormuz remains disrupted?
Well, the global oil supply is obviously going to get worsened, because 20% of oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz is getting impacted at this point in time. We have, no end in sight as far as this conflict is concerned. We don't exactly know how and when or why the situation is going to escalate, or why is it being escalated, or how it is going to get resolved, and what is going to be the solution ahead, what is going to be the permanent solution ahead as far as the entire conflict between Israel and Iran are concerned, which also has dragged the US in. So it remains to be seen more of it, how it is going to get resolved. But as of now, there is no end in sight. So the objectives were set for about 2 weeks, then it expanded to 4 weeks. Now we are talking about an ever-increasing threats against the country. The rescue of the Yemen has clearly showed us one thing, that Iran does have a war fighting capability when it comes to boots on the ground. You may destroy their aerial assets, you may destroy their landing strips, but now what Iran is doing is using smaller drones that do not need any kind of landing strip. They are using boots on the ground that can really inflict a heavy damage on the US troops if they decide to enter into the country, because air power obviously is great, but it doesn't win you all the wars, except putting boots on the ground, which means soldiers on the ground with their heavy artillery, with their heavy ammunitions, weaponry in an adversarial country that is not very small, not very underdeveloped. It's fairly a strong force with a strong supply of ammunition, armaments. So it's going to be a proper war, something that US has not seen in several decades. Because if you go back to Afghanistan, you were fighting Taliban. It was not a proper army. Here you are fighting a proper army. So it can be devastating for the US troops if they decide to enter the country.
But Akshay, Trump has been warning Iran, giving the deadlines also. Iran, in fact, has rejected it outrightly. Are diplomatic channels still active behind the scenes?
Well, definitely the diplomatic channels are always open in these kind of things because, every country wants to de-escalate when it comes to these kind of conflicts because it inflicts a heavy toll on it's impacting Iran as well. It's impacting the entire neighborhood. It's impacting it's killing so many of Iranians from the day one. So the diplomatic channels are open, but with all the diplomatic talks being unveiled by US President Donald Trump in a mocking manner in press conferences, the secret discussions and deliberations being spoken about and spoken by the president of the US are clearly damaging these diplomatic channels and the efforts that are going on.
All right, situation still remains volatile and no end in sight. We'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Akshay. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India Newshour. President Zelensky visits Damascus, pledges stronger security ties with Syria. Oil spill off Veracruz coast triggers protests amid ongoing investigation in Mexico. And third phase of catch-up vaccination campaign launched in Gaza to protect children amid conflict and displacement.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Hello. Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Abhishek Maj and some more stories. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, have decided to implement a production adjustment of 206,000 barrels per day. The 8 OPEC Plus countries, which previously announced additional voluntary adjustments in April, met virtually on Sunday to review global market conditions and outlook. In their collective commitment to support oil market stability, the OPEC Plus nations decided to implement production adjustments of 206,000 barrels per day from the 1.65 million barrels per day additional voluntary cuts first introduced in April 2023. This adjustment will be implemented in May 2026. The OPEC Plus, in a statement, said the countries will continue to closely monitor and assess market conditions and in their continuous efforts to support market stability. The countries also expressed concern regarding attacks on energy infrastructure, noting that restoring damaged energy assets to full capacity is both costly and takes a long time, thereby affecting overall supply availability. Meanwhile, crude oil prices opened higher on Monday, with US benchmark West Texas Intermediate up 1.86% to $113.62 a barrel as the war in West Asia continues to squeeze global energy supplies. North Sea Brent crude was also higher at the week's market opening, climbing 1.16% to $110.30 a barrel. On Thursday, the last trading day before the Good Friday holiday break, WTI settled up more than 11% and Brent soared nearly 8% in volatile trading, recording their biggest absolute price increase since 2020 as US President Trump promised to continue attacks on Iran. Now, Iraqi citizens held a peaceful demonstration at Liberation Square in the capital Baghdad to protest against the 5-week-long joint attacks on Iran by the United States and Israel. They demanded that the US and Israel immediately cease military strikes against Iran and oppose the United States' long-term military presence in Iraq and other West Asian countries. Since the US and Israel launched military operations against Iran, security force bases in many parts of Iraq, including those of the Popular Mobilization Forces, have been frequently targeted by airstrikes. The Popular Mobilization Forces have issued multiple statements identifying the US and Israel as the perpetrators of these attacks. In other news, Ukraine and Syria pledged greater security cooperation in talks on Sunday. President Volodymyr Zelensky said as Kiev seeks to promote its military expertise across the region. Continuing his tour of West Asia countries, Zelensky met with his Syrian counterpart Ahmed al-Shara on Sunday after arriving in Damascus alongside Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. In a social media post, Zelensky said the two countries agreed to work together to provide more security and opportunities for development for our societies. The visit follows Zelensky's trip to Turkey on Saturday and a Gulf tour last week against the backdrop of the war in West Asia, where he sought to clinch security deals and exchange Ukrainian drone expertise for air defense missiles. Meanwhile, Russia's military said on Monday that air defense units had downed 148 Ukrainian drones over a 3-hour period, and officials said emergency crews were restoring power to nearly 500,000 households in outages linked to air attacks. Now, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán called an emergency defense council meeting on Sunday after powerful explosives were found near a pipeline in Serbia that carries Russian gas to the country. Orbán said Serbian President Alexander Vučić informed him of a suspected sabotage near Kanjica by Hungary's border, prompting both countries to boost pipeline security. Orbán cautioned that Ukraine's activities endanger Hungary and noted that the Russian part of Turk Stream is under constant attack. While not directly blaming Ukraine for the Serbia incident, he claimed that Ukraine has long sought to limit Europe's access to Russian energy. The incident prompted political scrutiny in Hungary at a sensitive time, days before a national election, with Orbán's party trailing in opinion polls.
According to the information available to us, a sabotage operation has been prepared on the Vojvodina section of the Turkish Stream gas pipeline supplying Hungary. I have coordinated with the President of Serbia. No one was injured, and the gas pipeline is operating without disruption. For years, Ukraine has been working to cut Europe off from Russian energy. The Russian section of Turk Stream is also under continuous military attack. Ukraine's effort poses a life-threatening danger to Hungary.
60%-át ezen keresztül szerezzük be.
While EU member Hungary will hold a closely watched general election on April 12, in the lead-up to the April 12 vote, tensions have risen with a series of mutual accusations between the parties. US Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit Budapest on Tuesday and hold a rally with Viktor Orbán. And two merchant vessels near the Italian coast recovered the bodies of 2 migrants and rescued 32 survivors from a boat trying to cross to Europe from Libya on Easter weekend. The victims were transferred to an Italian Coast Guard patrol boat and brought to the Italian island of Lampedusa. Survivors said their ship had originally included 105 passengers, with 71 lost at sea. The International Organization for Migration estimates that at least 683 have died in the central Mediterranean this year, one of the highest tolls since 2014. In the southern Mexican state of Veracruz, local residents marched to protest an oil spill that has affected the Gulf of Mexico coastline for weeks. Mexican officials said they are investigating 2 possible causes of the spill, which is the natural seepage and an unidentified vessel. The head of the Mexican Navy said satellite images showed a slick off the coast and noted that any one of 13 vessels that had passed through the area could potentially be responsible for the discharge. Civil organizations have questioned the official version, saying the spill began in early February around a 36-inch Pemex pipeline. Authorities have removed 894.2 metric tons of hydrocarbons, carried out extensive sea and air patrols over 630 kilometers of coastline, and installed 2,000 meters of containment barriers. Update now on NASA's Artemis 2 mission. The 4 astronauts on the mission prepared on Sunday to enter the moon's sphere of influence, having already taken in sights of the lunar surface never before seen by human eyes. NASA's Artemis 2 mission will break Apollo 13's distance record, sending humans farther from Earth and offering a view of both sides of the moon. The Orion spacecraft is expected to surpass 248,655 miles on April 6 before traveling further into deep space.
We're going to pass the Apollo 13 distance record by humans, and that record is 248,655 statute miles. That's when we break the record. And then tomorrow evening around 7:07 p.m. Eastern, we will reach the farthest distance from Earth at a distance of 252,760 miles. That's 4,105 miles farther than Apollo 13.
Yeah, the caveat there, though, is that is the percent of the far side that is illuminated at closest approach. So when they are closest to the moon, they will see 21% of the far side. On their approach, as you saw in that visual, they will see the full disk. It will include a big section of the near side as well as that section of the.
While on day 5 of their 10-day mission, the Artemis 2 crew woke up to a ceremonial wake-up call from former Apollo 16 astronaut Charlie Duke, who walked on the moon in 1972, along with music from CeeLo Green. Earlier in the wee hours of Sunday, the US Space Agency published an image taken by the Artemis crew showing a distant moon with the Oriental Basin visible. The crew also sent Easter greetings to Earth. They spoke about the Easter holiday. As Scott said, the crew even hid space-appropriate Easter eggs around the spacecraft. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Brazil's indigenous communities have gathered in Brasilia for the Terra Livre camp, one of their largest mobilizations. Around 7,000 to 8,000 participants are expected as leaders renew demands for land rights, justice for persecuted figures, and stronger public policies ahead of 2026. In Gaza, the third phase of a catch-up vaccination campaign for children has begun, with Palestinian Red Crescent Society staff administering vaccines at clinics in Deir el-Balah. The campaign aims to reach children who missed routine immunizations due to the ongoing war and displacement. Still to come on this edition of DD India Newshour. India to boost natural gas supply to fertilizer plants to 90% amid West Asia concerns. Heavy rainfall across Sikkim triggers travel disruption, road closures, landslides and advisories issued. And today marks 96 years since Mahatma Gandhi's Salt March reshaped India's freedom struggle.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Recap of our top stories. Donald Trump gives Iran deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by Tuesday 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Tehran condemns Trump's remarks as incitement to war crimes. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar discusses West Asia situation with Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi. Also speaks with Qatari and UAE leadership. Amid conflict, India's 9th tanker Green Asha crosses the Strait of Hormuz. 8th tanker Green Sanvi carrying 46,000 metric tons of LPG to arrive in India today. Oil prices open higher after Easter holiday as West Asia conflict continues to disrupt global oil supply. OPEC Plus nations agree to increase oil production quotas for second month in a row. NASA's Artemis 2 mission prepares to enter the moon's sphere of influence, where moon's gravity will have stronger pull on the spacecraft than Earth. Crew shares pictures of Oriental Basin never before seen by human eyes. India will increase natural gas supply to fertilizer plants and key sectors from Monday as part of a broader effort to ensure energy stability amid the evolving situation in West Asia. The Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, in a statement issued on Sunday, said gas availability for fertilizer units will be raised to around 90% of the average consumption over the past 6 months, up from the current supply levels of about 70 to 75%. The increase, backed by available domestic inventory and scheduled LNG cargo arrivals, is aimed at ensuring a steady feedstock supply to urea plants ahead of key agricultural demand. In addition, the government will enhance gas supply by a further 10% to other industrial and commercial sectors, including those connected through city gas distribution networks, effective from April 6th. Let's now tell you how India is coping with the West Asia conflict. The Indian government has advised citizens to use digital modes for booking LPG cylinders and avoid visiting distributors unless necessary. Delivery authentication code-based LPG deliveries have increased from 53% in February to 90% as of Saturday to prevent diversion. Meanwhile, PNG expansion gathers pace with 360,000 connections completed and more than 390,000 new registrations since March. And in some other good news, all Indian seafarers are reported to be safe, with no incident involving Indian flagged vessels reported in the past 24 hours. Port operations across India remain normal. The Ministry of External Affairs continues to monitor the situation in the Gulf. And the flight situation continues to improve, with over 702,000 passengers returning to India since 28 February. And the Government of India has introduced a 5 kilogram free trade LPG cylinder, which brings relief to people facing a shortage of cooking gas. Consumers reported that these mini cylinders are now easily available by simply presenting an identity card, with no supply issues being experienced. Indian Oil, HPCL and Bharat Gas have launched extensive publicity campaigns across the country. In Hyderabad's Karimnagar, an awareness program was organized in which an LPG sales officer from BPCL released a brochure on the benefits of the 5 kg cylinders. With steady supply and easy access, the government's move has eased the daily struggles of families and individuals alike, reinforcing its commitment to ensuring energy security and convenience for all. After the LPG carrier Green Sanvi successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz on April 3rd, another vessel, Green Asha, crossed the Gulf of Hormuz on Sunday. Vessel Green Asha, carrying about 15,400 metric tons of LPG, has safely transited from Strait of Hormuz and is on its way to Mumbai. Meanwhile, LPG vessel Green Sanvi, carrying over 46,000 metric tons of LPG cargo with 25 seafarers on board, is expected to arrive in India today. Now, heavy rainfall across India's northeastern state of Sikkim triggers travel disruption, with road closures, landslides and widespread advisories. Massive landslide was reported in North Sikkim on Sunday, with Lachen town completely disconnected. The active weather conditions have affected thousands of tourists and residents attempting to navigate the region's mountain passes and scenic routes. The authorities have issued explicit advisories urging all travellers and tourists in affected areas to remain in place and avoid unnecessary movement until weather conditions improve and roads are cleared for safe passage. The Indian Met Department has issued critical weather bulletins forecasting continued rainfall activity, thunderstorms, lightning and gusty winds till today, that is Monday. And INS Trikand, the frontline guided missile frigate of the Indian Navy, is in Tanzania's Dar es Salaam during an ongoing operational deployment in the southwestern part of the Indian Ocean region. Professional, cultural and social engagements will be progressed during the stay, and essential stores will be handed over to the government of Tanzania. Captain of INS Srikanth will call on senior dignitaries of the Tanzania People's Defence Force and the government of Tanzania. The port call will further strengthen camaraderie, mutual cooperation and bilateral ties between the nations. India and Tanzania, bridges of friendship. Minister of Foreign Affairs of St. Kitts and Nevis Denzel Douglas arrived in New Delhi on Sunday as part of this 5-day visit. The visit marks a significant step in strengthening the historical ties and expanding cooperation between the two countries. During his visit, the former Prime Minister will meet Dr. A. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister, at the Hyderabad House. Significantly, the High Commission of St. Kitts and Nevis in India will also be inaugurated. Let's now take a look at other stories making news. The Saptrang Creators Fest 2026 Gujarat's premier inaugural creator festival was held on Sunday. Over 150 influencers with more than 100k followers and 850 influencers with over 10k followers participated. The event featured competitions across categories, workshops, a mega awards function and cultural performances. Overall, the grand festival was all about celebrating creativity in every form. Dhinga Gavar, a unique cultural festival of Rajasthan's Jodhpur, is being celebrated with much fanfare from Sunday. Women in disguises of gods, goddess or bandits worship the deity Dhinga Gavar for 16 days and playfully hit men with sticks. It is a popular belief that any unmarried man who comes near these women and is stricken by the stick gets married soon with a suitable girl. Stick is called Baint in Hindi, so this festival is also known as Bantmar Teej. A slice of Malaysia was visible recently in New Delhi at the Cultural Carnival, held to showcase heritage of the Southeast Asian country and promote tourism. Held at the High Commission of Malaysia in Delhi's Chanakyapuri, the event was part of the country's global campaign Visit Malaysia 2026. The one-day carnival included cultural performances by Malaysian artists, interactive sessions and authentic Malaysian cuisine. Indian Railways has announced the creation of the South Coast Railway Zone with its headquarters in Visakhapatnam, addressing concerns over station locations by clarifying that all 7 stations in the Palasa-Ichapuram section, spanning about 50 kilometers, are situated within Srikakulam district and none fall in Odisha. And today marks 96 years since Mahatma Gandhi picked up a handful of salt on the shores of Dandi and changed the course of history. On 6th April 1930, a 24-day salt march culminated in an act so simple, so defiant, that it shook the foundations of the British Empire and ignited India's civil disobedience movement. Let's take a look back at that defining day.
96 years ago, on 6th of April 1930, Mahatma Gandhi and his 78 followers reached the shores of Dandi after a 385-kilometer journey spanning 24 days. Their mission was simple, yet it carried the weight of a nation to defy the British salt tax, a law that for decades had turned the most basic, everyday necessity of India's poorest into a crime. By picking up a handful of salt from the shore, Gandhi did not merely break a law, he broke the illusion of imperial invincibility. In that silent gesture, the Salt Satyagraha was born, an act of civil disobedience that rippled across villages, cities and towns, shaking the foundation of the British Empire's rule in India. The village of Dandi, then a quiet hamlet of barely 700 people, was an unlikely stage for such a defining moment. With little food, water or shelter, the village had no real means to host the thousands who would soon arrive to stand in solidarity. Yet, when the people came, walking barefoot, carrying banners, some empty-handed but not empty-hearted, locals, volunteers and supporters from surrounding areas came together, sharing whatever they had: a roof, a meal, a place to rest. Overnight, Dandi became the beating heart of India's freedom struggle, a living proof of Gandhi's belief that self-reliance and non-violence should carry a nation on their shoulders. 96 years later, that same ethos still echo, illustrating Gandhi's message of quiet courage of ordinary people, choosing discipline over fear, truth over convenience, and dignity over submission. His principles of peaceful resistance and self-reliance continue to inspire, reminding us that the fight for justice and equality is a collective effort that transcends time and place. And in that continuity, the shores of Dandi remain less a marker of the past than a mirror of the courage we still are called to live. Sujata Lochap for DD India.
All right, still to come on this edition of DD India Newshour. Reserve Bank of India MPC meeting kicks off amid global uncertainty. Investors watch for interest rate guidance. In Asian Boxing Championships, world champions Meenakshi Huda, Jasmine Lamboria power into semi-finals. An ancient Vedic timekeeping revived with unique Panchang clock at Kashi Vishwanath Temple in Varanasi.
स्वागत आहे टू मैग्नेटिक महाराष्ट्र. Share in the richness of Maharashtra as one family, united by the collective vision of building a better tomorrow.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. Business updates now. The Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee meeting will begin on Monday, closely tracking guidance on interest rates and the inflation outlook. The meeting comes against a backdrop of heightened global uncertainty driven by the ongoing West Asia conflict, rising crude oil prices, weakening rupee and concerns over energy supply disruptions. This is the first RBI MPC meet for the fresh fiscal year of 2026-27. Investors believe that RBI is likely to maintain a status quo on policy rates. The outcome of the policy will be closely tracked by investors and economists for cues on how the central bank plans to navigate the evolving macroeconomic landscape. Oil prices rose, bonds fell and stocks were mixed at the start of trading in Asia on Monday after US President Donald Trump warned to strike Iran's power plants and bridges if the Strait of Hormuz isn't opened by Tuesday. S&P 500 futures sank 0.2%, while MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan was up 0.5%. The Nikkei 225 rose 1.2% as South Korea's Kospi advanced 2%. Brent crude futures opened higher, rising 1.4% to $110.58 a barrel after members of the OPEC Plus agreed on Sunday to raise its oil output quotas by 206,000 barrels per day for May. However, the increase will exist only on paper for several major producing countries behind the Strait of Hormuz that have sustained damage to oil production facilities and transport infrastructure since the war started. Despite a rapid expansion of electric vehicles, China remains vulnerable to global energy shocks, highlighting the country's continued dependence on imported oil. While Beijing has promoted EV adoption as a way to reduce reliance on foreign crude, experts warn that the shift provides only partial protection. China still imports the majority of its crude, leaving its economy exposed to geopolitical tensions and price swings. Heavy dependence on imported oil, along with the high cost of expanding electric vehicle infrastructure, highlights a fundamental weakness in the country's energy strategy that could be exposed during global crisis. And tensions in the region are rising again, and this time the focus has shifted to another crucial sea route. Iran has signaled it could widen the pressure by turning its focus to another critical global shipping route, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, raising fresh concerns over supply chains and energy flows. Let us know more about the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, also known as the Gate of Tears in Arabic. It is a narrow waterway at the southern tip of Red Sea, connecting with Gulf of Aden in Indian Ocean. It separates Yemen on Arabian Peninsula from Djibouti and Eritrea on Horn of Africa. Red Sea is a key link between Europe and Asia and one of the busiest shipping lanes. Oil tankers and cargo ships from Indian Ocean pass through it to reach Red Sea and Suez Canal. In 2023, about 26,000 ships passed through the Suez Canal. Traffic dropped to 12,700 by 2025 after Houthi rebels attacked Red Sea vessels. 12% of world oil shipments passed through Bab el-Mandeb in first half of 2023. The region is one of the most highly militarized zones in the world. United States and France have major military bases in Djibouti. After conflict between Israel and Hamas, Houthis threatened to attack any ship heading to the Israeli ports. In response, the European Union in 2024 launched a naval operation to protect shipping in the Red Sea. And big news just coming in, the US, Iran and a group of regional mediators are discussing the terms for a potential 45-day ceasefire that could lead to a permanent end to the war. According to a report by Axios, which cited US and Israeli sources with knowledge of the talks, last-ditch efforts are underway to seal a truce in the next 48 hours prior to the expiry of US President Donald Trump's deadline to Tehran to accept a deal and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The mediators are discussing the terms of a two-phase deal, the report said, adding that the first phase would be a potential 45-day ceasefire during which a permanent end to the war would be negotiated. So big news coming in here. While none of them is confirmed yet, this could be the first, in fact, real diplomatic opening we have seen in days. Talks of a 45-day ceasefire, and if it holds, could in fact create a pathway to something bigger or maybe a permanent end to the conflict. All right, sports updates now. We'll start with boxing. The Indian women's boxing contingent continued its impressive showing at the Asian Boxing Championships 2026 with Meenakshi Huda and Jasmine Lamboria storming to unanimous victories in their respective last 8 bouts. In the women's 48 kg category, reigning world champion Meenakshi produced a composed and commanding display to defeat Japan's Yuka Sadamatsu by a unanimous 5-0 decision, controlling the bout with sharp combinations and ring awareness. World champion Jasmine also matched that intensity in the 57 kg division, outclassing China Ziyi Shen with an equally dominant 5-0 verdict to book her place in the semi-finals. Meenakshi will meet Thailand's Tipsacha Yodwari, while Jasmine will face Uzbek Olympian Nezhina Ukhtamova. Cricket now, updates on Indian Premier League 2026. Chennai Super Kings slumped to their third consecutive defeat of the season as they lost by 43 runs to Royal Challengers Bengaluru at M. Chinnaswamy Stadium on Sunday. CSK are yet to win a game this season and are rooted to the bottom of the table with a net run rate of -2.517. It is CSK's second longest losing streak to start an IPL campaign. In another IPL encounter, Lucknow Super Giants defeated Sunrisers Hyderabad by 5 wickets in Hyderabad on Sunday. Chasing a target of 157 set by SRH, Lucknow achieved the target in 19.5 overs. With this victory, LSU opened their account on the points table. And in today's fixture, Kolkata Knight Riders and Punjab Kings will resume their fiery rivalry at the iconic Eden Gardens in Kolkata. The clash has seen some interesting matches in recent seasons, including the highest chase in IPL history and the lowest total defended in the tournament, both ending in Punjab's favour. And visitors to Kashi can now look forward to witness and understand one interesting aspect of India's Vedic traditions. A clock that follows ancient time-keeping science has been installed in the Kashi Vishwanath temple complex in Varanasi.
A clock inspired by the time-keeping traditions of ancient Indian Emperor Vikramaditya has been installed at Shankaracharya Chowk in the Kashi Vishwanath temple complex in Varanasi. Gifted by the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Mohan Yadav, the clock incorporates elements of the Panchang, the traditional Hindu calendar, and tracks nakshatras, the 27 lunar constellations used in Hindu astronomy. Together, these features offer devotees a glimpse into ancient Hindu astronomical knowledge and the system of timekeeping.
It is based on the Vikramic Panchang. The clock is designed according to the Indian system of timekeeping, in which a day is considered from sunrise to sunset. This clock is a unique contribution to mankind, dividing a day into 30 muhurats.
Calling it a step towards reviving and promoting India's ancient heritage, many devotees who visited the temple on Sunday welcomed the move.
This gives us and future generations a lot to learn. Through it, we can understand and connect with our Sanatan heritage. We can also teach our children how time was calculated in the Vedic era and how such clocks functioned.
The initiative coincides with a 3-day cultural celebration in Kashi, honoring the life and legacy of Emperor Vikramaditya.
And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.